Today we will be live on Nigeria, an African country. Nigerian head of state and government is President Olusegun Obasanjo since May 2009, May 29, 1999. Okay, the capital of Nigeria is Abuja. Total land size of Nigeria is 92 lakh 33 99 lakh 23,768 square kilometer. Total population of Nigeria is 29 million. GDP at PPP is 125 trillion US dollars. GDP per capita income is $1,000 US dollars. The major cities of Nigeria are Wari, Benin City, Lagos, Ibadan, Ilorin, Ogmoso, Ohogbo, Port Harcourt, Enugu, Makurdi, Yola, Abuja, Jos, Zaria, Kaduna, Kano, Kastina, Sokoto, Maiduguri. So these are the major and important cities of Nigeria. Now we will talk about the introduction, why this case study. That means why we will talk about Nigeria. Nigeria stands out in ways that are both impressive and disheartening. First, Nigeria is noteworthy for its sheer size. It is the most populous country in Africa. Second, unlike many other African countries, Nigeria is blessed with a great deal of natural wealth, from oil to agriculture. Following independence from British rule in 1960, those assets would have been expected to make Nigeria a major regional, if not global, actor. Yet, exactly the opposite happened, and Nigeria had become renowned for all that can go wrong. For most of the time since independence, the country has been under military rule. Those long periods of military dictatorship coincided with widespread corruption, with oil revenues and other resources siphoned off to line the pockets of those in power. In spite of earning billions of dollars in oil exports, Nigeria has become one of the poorest and least developed countries in the world. It would seem to be an excellent example of a country in which natural resources have been used by those in power to buy supporters and repress the public. Yet the long era of military rule may now be at an end. In 1999, Nigeria returned to civilian rule, and since then a fragile democratic system has taken hold. Still, much remains to be done. Nigeria lacks the rule of law and continues to be recognized as one of the most corrupt countries in the world. The state also has questionable control over the monopoly of violence, both in terms of civilian control over the military and the country's widespread criminal and political violence. The standard of living for the average Nigerian remains very low, far below what the country's wealth should ensure. If it is to succeed, the country must confront these challenges while facing a large foreign debt incurred while billions of dollars in oil revenue were stolen by those in power. If the legacy of its military rule were not enough of a challenge for Nigeria, a second concern derives from its sheer size. Nigeria is a diverse country encompassing numerous ethnic groups whose local interests have been reinforced by corruption and federalism. For the past 30 years, military rule has largely kept fractiousness in check, but tensions and violence have surfaced with democratic rule. Most disturbing is a growing ethnic rift between the Muslim North and the Christian and animist South. At a time when many global conflicts center on religion and religious fundamentalism, the prospect of increasing tension among faiths in Nigeria leads some observers to worry that in the long run the country will be ungovernable and will return to a authoritarianism, civil war, or both. Is Nigeria doomed to be a failed state? Nigeria thus provides a fascinating, if daunting, example of the possibilities and potential limits of state power and democracy. Can the change from military rule to democracy help bring stability and prosperity to Nigeria? Or are the problems of state capacity and autonomy such that democracy cannot help improve them and might even make them worse? We will consider these tensions as we investigate Nigeria's political heritage, current institutions, and political perspectives. Now we will talk about major geographic and demographic features of Nigeria. We have noted that one of Nigeria's most impressive features is its sheer size. Nigeria is the largest country in Africa in terms of population and among the top 10 in the world. Lying along the western coast of the continent, Nigeria has a diverse climate and geography. The Niger-Benue River Nevu system divides the country into distinct regions. The north is relatively arid and known for its grasslands, while the south is characterized by tropical forest and coastal swamps. Nigeria's geography and climate, particularly in the south, are favorable to agriculture, such that nearly one third of the land is arable, compared with only 15% of the land in China and 20% of the land in the United States. Until oil became a major export commodity, cocoa and nuts are a major source of foreign trade. Nigeria's best known region is the Niger River Delta. The Niger River enters the sea at that point, creating a vast swampy area of over 5,000 square miles. It is the third largest wetland in the world after the Netherlands and the Mississippi Delta, and home to an enormous range of plants and animals. The Niger Delta is also home to approximately 10 million people who traditionally have been engaged in farming and fishing. The complicated topography of the area has limited interaction, integration, and assimilation, thus fostering a large variety of ethnicities. By some estimates, over a dozen groups speaking about 25 languages inhabit the delta. It is also one of the poorest regions of the country with limited infrastructure and development. But the Niger Delta is also the source of Nigeria's oil and the vast majority of the country's exports. Oil production in the delta has contributed to the national corruption spoken of earlier, and at the local level too, its effects have been profound. The first and most commonly cited local effect is environmental degradation. In the nearly half century since oil production began, there have been more than 4,000 spills whose effects on the wetlands and population are a source of intense domestic and international controversy. Oil production has also abated ethnic conflicts in the region, with groups on occasion attacking oil facilities in order to draw attention to their demands or seek ransoms. Finally, oil production has exacerbated intergroup hostility in the delta, as some groups have perceived that others have benefited disproportionately from the industry. Given the importance of oil to Nigeria, the problems of this region significantly affect the security of the country as a whole. The diversity that marks the delta is mirrored across the country as a whole. Nigeria is home to some 250 ethnic groups. Dominant among them are the Hausa and the Fulani, who are overwhelmingly Muslim and concentrated in the north. The Igbo, also Igbold spelled Ibo, who are predominantly Christian and concentrated in the southwest, and the Yoruba, who inhabit the southwest and whose members are divided among the Christian, Muslim, and local animist faith. Nigeria's large population is a function of its growth rate. In the past 20 years, the country's population has doubled, with the result that nearly half the population is now under the age of 14. According to some projections, the country will increase by another 40 million people in the next decade. With Lagos becoming one of the 10 largest cities in the world, the presence of a large, rapidly growing, ethnically and religiously diverse population will complicate development, stability, and governance. Now let's talk about historical development of the state of Nigeria. Like most other less developed countries, Nigeria has a history of marked by local political organization, imperial control, and recent independence and instability. Contrary to common assumptions, however, pre-colonial Nigeria was neither undeveloped nor unorganized. Rather, the region was marked by varying degrees and kinds of political and social organization, some of which are highly complex and wide ranging. Although we cannot explore each of them in depth, we can point to some of the earliest and most powerful examples. Nigeria was the setting for several early kingdoms over 2000 years ago. The members of the Nok society, located in what is now central Nigeria, fashioned objects out of iron and terracotta with a degree of sophistication unmatched in West Africa. Though little less is known about their civilization, as the roots of today's dominant ethnic groups began to take shape, new forms of political organization also emerged around 12,000 CE. 1200 CE. The Hausa to the north established a series of powerful city-states which served as conduits of north-south trade. In the southwest, the Yoruba kingdom of Oyo de Togo of Oyo extended its power beyond the borders of modern-day Nigeria into present-day Togo. This kingdom grew wealthy through trade and the exploitation of natural resources, facilitated by its location along the coast. In the southeast, the Igbo maintained less centralized political power, though they too had a precedent of earlier kingdoms and would come to play a central role in modern Nigerian politics. Islam and the Nigerian North. The fortunes of those and other peoples in what is now Nigeria changed dramatically as contact with peoples, politics, and ideas from outside West Africa increased. The first important impact came not from Europe, however, but from the Middle East, with the spread of Islam. By the 11th century, Islam had found its way into the Hausa region of northern Nigeria, carried along trade routes linking the region to North Africa and beyond. By the 15th century, Islam had brought literacy and scholarship to the region through the Arabic language. Though the religion remained largely confined to the Hausa elite, by the late 18th century, however, an increase in contact with Islamic regions led to an increase in conversions to the faith. The religion's growing influence was solidified by the leadership of Usman Dan Fodio from 1754 to 1817. A religious scholar, Usman played an important role in spreading Islam among the Hausa and Fulani. Usman found widespread support among the peasantry who felt oppressed under the third city-states warring monarchies and saw in Islam's message a promise of greater social equality. Their embrace of Islam in turn alarmed those who in power, eventually precipitating a conflict between the city-states and Usman. Following an initial conflict, Usman declared jihad against the Hausa city-states in 1804 and by 1808 had overthrown the ruling monarchs, establishing what became known as the Sokoto Caliphate. The Sokoto Caliphate became the largest empire in Africa at the time and provided a uniform government to a region previously racked by war. Islam would now play a central role in Western Africa and in the eventual establishment of an independent Nigerian state. European imperialism. As Islam and centralized political organization spread across the north, the south experienced similarly dramatic effects. The south experienced similarly dramatic effects with the arrival of the European powers. As far back as the late 15th century, Europeans had begun arriving along Nigeria's coast, purchasing from indigenous traders agricultural products as well as slaves, often captives from local owners. From the 17th to 19th century, Europeans established several coastal ports to support the burgeoning trade in slaves, with the United Kingdom becoming the major trading power. During that time, over 3 million slaves were shipped from Nigeria to the Americas. In 1807, the United Kingdom declared the slave trade illegal and established a naval presence off Nigeria's waters for enforcement. Though an illegal trade continued for another half century, the precipitous decline in the region's major export contributed to the collapse of the Oyo Empire and to warfare among the Yoruba, which in turn paved the way for an expanded British presence in the interior. The colonial presence further expanded as British industrialization generated ever greater demand for sources such as palm oil, cocoa, and timber. That demand radically changed the nature of agricultural production and encouraged the greater use of local slavery to produce these goods. At the same time, British missionaries began to proselytize in the coastal and southern regions, converting large numbers of Igbo and Yoruba to Christianity. By 1861, the British had established a colony at Lagos, and by the 1884 to 85 Berlin Conference, other European powers had recognized the United Kingdom's sphere of influence along the coast. Fearing French and German encroachment in the interior, the United Kingdom quickly joined the European powers' scramble for Africa by asserting its authority far inland. Through a combination of diplomacy, cooperation, and force, the United Kingdom established control over both the north and the south. In many areas, the British relied upon a policy of indirect rule. For example, as the Sokoto Caliphate was brought under British control, local leaders were allowed to keep their positions, co-opted as part of the new state bureaucracy. Furthermore, Sharia or Islamic law was respected in non-criminal matters, and in that region, Christian proselytizing was prohibited. Such policies helped limit local resistance but increased the power of some ethnic groups over others, giving them greater authority within the imperial administration in areas where indirect rule was less successful, as among the Igbo. Resistance was much more significant. In 1914, the various protectorates in the area under British control were unified under the name Nigeria, though the country remained highly decentralized administratively, reflecting its distinct regional differences. Following unification, Nigeria experienced dramatic change under imperial rule. A modern infrastructure was developed with the construction of ports, roads, and railways to help facilitate economic relations. Agricultural production continued to play an important role in exports within Nigerian society. Development meant the establishment of Western educational policies and institutions, especially in regions where Christian missionaries are active. In general, indirect rule meant the development of a new elite who were more westernized and more conscious of the complexities of imperialism. The creation of a colonial legislative council and local elections for some of the seats introduced the idea of democratic representative institutions, no matter how limited. It might be thought that the development of a westernized elite would serve to perpetuate imperial control. Instead, exposure to Western ideas often served as the foundation for resistance as Nigerians embraced heretofore, the heretofore alien concepts of nationalism and sovereignty. Such ideas were not easily planted in Nigeria's complex political terrain. For some activists, anti colonialism meant a greater role for Nigeria and other African states in the Commonwealth of Nations, the loose affiliation of former British colonies opposed to complete independence. For others, it meant a reassertion of pre colonial political structures that had been destroyed and or weakened by British rule. As economic development, urbanization, and state centralization increased the integration of Nigeria as a whole, however, there began to emerge the tentative notion of a Nigerian nation and a state that could be independent from colonial rule. Following World War II, Nigeria saw the rapid expansion of various civil society organizations, ranging from political parties and ethnic movements to labor unions and business movements. Among the numerous political leaders who emerged during this time was Benjamin Namdi Azikwe from 1904 to 1996. Born in northern Nigeria, Azikwe studied and taught in the United States before returning to Nigeria in 1938. He established a daily newspaper and in 1944 helped found the National Council of Nigerian Citizens or NCNC, which advocated national unity and self-government. While the NCNC sought to appeal to all Nigerians, it drew heavily from the Igbo, while other political parties such as the Northern People's Congress (NPC) and the Action Group Party (AGP) were backed by Hausa Muslims and the Yoruba respectively. The British government attempted to deal with the rising tide of Nigerian activism, strikes, and competing demands by reforming the local constitution, creating regional assemblies, and formalizing the decentralized nature of imperial rule through a system of federalism. Executive power remained in the hands of a British governor, but increasingly authority devolved on the local level. Thus, while Nigerian nationalism became a potent force among some political elites, the decentralization of power reinforced regional tendencies. By the late 1950s, an array of constitutional reforms had effectively created autonomous regions in the north, west, and east, with the goal of eventual national independence while remaining within the Commonwealth. The new federal political structure consisted of three regions: Northern, Western, and Eastern. A directly elected House of Representatives, a Senate whose members would be indirectly elected by the regional assemblies, a Prime Minister, and a Governor General, who would serve as the representative of the British monarchy. Azikwe was appointed Governor General on October 1, 1960. Nigeria formally gained its independence, creating what is now known as the First Republic. Absent much of the violence and destruction that plagued decolonization elsewhere, it also enjoyed ongoing industrialization, strong exports, and the promise of oil revenues, whose potential was just beginning to be explored. So video has been already half an hour. I would like to put an end to this video, but in the next video we will talk about the independence, conflict, and civil war of Nigeria. Then we will also talk about the military era during Nigerian time. And last, we will talk about the political regime, political institutions, the constitutions of Nigeria, the branches of government, the executive system, the judicial system, and the electoral system and local government. and other institutions like the military. We will also talk about political conflict and competition. We will talk about the party system of Nigeria. We will talk about the election system of Nigeria, the political parties of Nigeria, and we will also have the opportunity to talk about civil society in Nigeria. And then we will talk about the society of Nigeria, ethnic and national identity, ideology and political culture. We will also talk about the political economy of Nigeria, and we will also discuss the foreign relations and the world of Nigeria. And then we will talk about the current issues, 419 scams about Nigeria. So I hope you have enjoyed listening to this. And in the next video, in our next live, we will talk about independence, conflict, and the civil war of Nigeria. So I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video. And uh, uh, I made this video in English because you see many people out of Bangladesh also watch my videos. So that's why there are many people in my channel who don't understand Bangla. They commented in my channel that they try to listen to my understand to my lectures through subtitles like English. So that's why I made a genuine video in English on Nigeria, one of the richest but the poorest country and the largest country in Africa, in the continent of Africa. So thank you very much and good night. Wishing you all a good health and a good sleep and a good future. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah and adab and namaskar to all everybody. And if you like this video on this channel, the videos in this channel are totally for education purpose and edutainment purpose and information purpose. So I think this video will help you a lot in going in leading our life to a longer distance. So thank you very much. Thank you. Bye bye.